welcome, everybody. Good day once again. This is Critical Mess. It's the podcast where three guys in the ad business talk about movies that critics and audiences don't agree on. You're here for episode 12. I'm Nick Honeywell. I'm here with Mr. Griswold, otherwise known as Andrew, and Mr. Brian McCullough. Producer Ben is absent tonight, so God help us all. Gentlemen, though, say hello. Say hello.
What's going on, everybody?
Hey, this is Brian McCullough here, and my ninth favorite movie of all time is Bone Tomahawk.
Great selection. You guys turned me on to that movie.
Yeah,
So, I much appreciated.
I like feel-good films.
Yeah, love that movie, though. Okay, icebreaker. Here we go. Tonight's icebreaker has actually nothing to do with the movie tonight. The movie tonight has a lot of violence and fighting in it, but it's not it doesn't have this kind of violence and fighting related to this question. And this question is, what's the best movie gunfight that is not Heat?
Oh, I was going to say that's not Hard Boiled. I was assuming you were going to say that, but
I mean, Hard Boiled I think is on the table.
okay, sorry. So that's not Heat. Okay.
Oh, that's not Heat. I vaguely remember Desperado. What is that, a 94, 95 film with...
Banderas?
Yeah, Banderas. When he goes into that bar and he shoots everybody up and he kills everybody in the whole room over like a glass of whiskey or something like that. I can't remember. But I vaguely remember a lot of that and just being very intrigued by the whole thing. I don't know who did that movie.
Boy, it must have really left an impression.
I know.
If you can
I know, I'm barely remembering, but I can't remember why.
Robert
why I
Rodriguez.
remember that. But yeah, it was just like insanely
Row,
bloody.
row.
I remember like all the deaths from like as soon as he busts through the door and he goes in and he tries to get like a glass of whiskey and then guys at the table. You know, I just remember it. I don't know why, but it came
All
to
right,
mind.
I've got two answers. My favorite scene involving guns is the bridge scene on Sicario.
Ooh,
I wouldn't
good
necessarily
answer.
call that a gunfight, though. So what I'm going to say is, I hate to sound cliched, and I know there's probably better ones, but I'm on the spot. The one that is the most artfully done and that I could rewatch the most amount of times, and I know was heavily inspired by John Woo. It's the government lobby building gunfight in The Matrix.
Great choice.
Yes. I mean, I honestly, yes, I probably would go with Hard Boiled, but I'll pick something else.
Sorry.
You know, because you stole my thunder there.
Dang it, my bad.
No, that's okay. That's okay, because I think that, you know, that one is kind of a little bit of a cliched answer, but it is. It's just so good. It's just such a good scene, and it was such an innovative scene. I'll go for like a kind of a weird, unorthodox answer here. Maybe not the best gunfight of all time, but just one that a movie that has a couple of really good gunfights that I don't think anyone talks about, and that's The Way of the Gun. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie with Ryan Phillippe.
No.
Yeah, I don't know who directed that movie.
Ryan Phillippe.
I should know. Yeah, in Benicio del Toro.
Recent or back when his prime in the 90s or early 2000s?
This would have been a while ago, so this would have been 2000 on the dot. Yeah, it was Phillippe and Del Toro. Yeah, and who else is in it? James Caan, Juliette Lewis, Taye Diggs.
Why do I only ever think of Ryan Phillippe in the context of Claire Danes? Were they in a movie together? Why are they
kind of look the same?
They're like a pair. A pair. Why does my brain do that?
Probably because they were both hot in that era of movies, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I guess so.
Tonight, like I said, we are talking action movies, sort of, but not that kind of action. So we're talking about a movie that came out in 2004, a movie that I like, a movie directed by Wolfgang Peterson, stars a lot of famous people like Brad Pitt, Eric Bana, Orlando Bloom, Diane Kruger, Brian Cox, just a consummate professional. I think we can all agree. Sean Bean, Brendan Gleeson, Rose Byrne, Peter O'Toole. I mean, good gravy. This movie is stacked. Is this more stacked than Armageddon?
I mean, with badass old guys
In talented actors versus
yes,
young, not so talented actors.
I'm gonna say it gives it a run for its money.
Yeah. It just may. It had a big old budget, as you might surmise, $180 million, which is a lot, especially for the time. But brought in nearly $500 million worldwide, so it was a pretty big hit. It's long too, long movie, close to 3 hours. So a very quick refresher about our criteria. So movies have to be fresh with critics or rotten with audiences or the other way around, and the disparity needs to be at least 20%. for the movie to qualify for us to talk about it. So tonight the movie Troy is 53%, so rotten with critics, and 73%, so fresh with audiences. So not the biggest disparity in the world, but it does meet our criteria, and this is a fun movie to talk about.
Hey,
So-
can I add something to that real quick? I
Please.
just figured something out on Rotten Tomatoes. I remember bemoaning the fact that they took away the X out of 10 rating that they used to show. They used to show like, how much percent was fresh and then what is the actual like 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 10. Well, it's still there. It's just really hard to find. I found it the other day. If you actually click not on the the reviews underneath the percentage, but you click on the percentage itself, it opens up a little modal and shows you that this movie got a 6.0 out of 10 is the critics out of 10. So it's a 53% score, but a 6 out of 10. And then conversely, the audience was a 73%, but is a 3.8 out of 5. So I think that's a really helpful little metric to see because sometimes the percentage can be a little bit deceiving, but still discrepancy.
Brian's hot tip of the day. It's brought to you by Dalmore.
Dalmore.
We are sponsored by Dalmore tonight. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. You are so deeply tasty. I want to start talking about this movie. Let's get into this. When did you guys see this movie for the first time? When did you guys see Troy for the first time?
Definitely saw this in theaters probably in the time when my buddy worked at the theater, so I got to see it for free, and I saw it on opening weekend. So yeah, I remember it being enjoyable. I remember people liking it. I remember like the fanfare was there. I just don't remember critics beating the hell out of it. I don't think that was a big thing for me to review at the time, but I do remember enjoying it quite a bit when I saw it.
Yeah, as I started waxing poetic at the end of our last episode, till producer Ben told me to save it for this episode, I was super stoked coming off of the Gladiator high, and I wanted to catch that high again and again. And movies like Kingdom of Heaven, Troy, Alexander kept coming out and eluding my taste. But I saw this. I was hot for it. Went to the theater to see it. Didn't watch it again until yesterday.
Wow. Okay. So, and Grizz, had you seen this again since the theater?
Nope. It's
Okay.
been a very long time since I've seen it.
Okay. All right. Well, I did also see this in the theater. I had also seen it probably maybe at least twice, probably 3 times, and then again a couple of nights ago. So I've seen this movie maybe 5-ish times.
That might be the most amount of times you've seen any of the movies we've done.
Yeah.
Wow.
I gotta
Yeah.
admit.
Yeah. That may be true, and I think that we can roll right into our ratings then. And I'm happy to start. As you might guess, my rating is going to be pretty high because I really like this movie, and I just have a lot of fun with this movie. I'm giving this movie an 83. I think it's a great movie that I really enjoy for a lot of reasons. It's a huge blockbuster. It gives me the emotional just resonance and pull that I want out of just a big, expensive, ridiculous, over-the-top period piece. And there's just lots of great action, and I like action movies. So we're going to get into that more, all of that more. And it's not a perfect movie, obviously. There's some things I don't like about it, but I really like this movie a lot. So what do you guys
So
think?
you're at an 83.
I'm at an 83.
All right, Grizz, what are you at?
I'm at a flat 70.
A flat 70?
Yep, flat 70.
Not a
100.
curvy 70.
No,
Just a flat one.
70, just straight up. It feels good. That felt like a good review there for me. So
Well, you know what? I'm at a 42.
Wow.
So
All right.
we have a pretty big disagreement
Okay,
here.
good.
And I'll just give some context to that. I felt nothing when I watched this movie 20 years ago, and I felt nothing when I watched it yesterday.
All right. Well, this should be exciting then.
you're a soulless son of a bitch.
No, this movie's soulless.
Yes, it is.
I'll have you know, I watched Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves today, and I cried at the end of that movie. Yeah, so I'm not heartless. Okay, come on. Have you seen that, by the way?
Which,
I have. Yeah, it's good.
It's
I thought it was
way
good.
better than it needed to be. You
Yeah.
need to watch it.
okay, I'm
All
going
right,
to add to
yeah.
the list.
You're listening to Critical Mess. We're talking about Troy, and Brian and I don't agree. Chris is in the middle, so we're going to discuss this a little bit. Let's just talk a little bit out the gate. Why let's talk about our premise here. Why do critics and audiences not agree on this movie? Do you think, guys?
Well, first of all, it's not a huge disagreement. It barely meets our criteria. It's 20% difference. I wouldn't say critics hated this movie. Matter of fact, when I just read that out of 10 score, it's a 6 out of 10. So if you were basing it off of that, I would say the critics would barely say this was fresh. So I don't think there's a huge disagreement. I think maybe we should just read a critic score or read a critic's review, and I'll just ask if you guys agree or disagree or see what you think about it. So here we get into sort of the historical part of it, because it's based on the Iliad. So I don't know how deep we want to go into, what you guys' like Greek, mythology is and all that kind of stuff. But Odysseus is one of the characters in here. Achilles, there's a lot of, they talk about Zeus. They talk about the gods ad infinitum.
Demigods. That's the word.
Demigod.
We couldn't think of it
that's the
earlier.
word.
We were trying to figure out what the hell they were
I said
called.
pseudo-gods?
Pseudo-gods. Oh my God, yeah. Demigod.
So Nell Minow of Common Sense Media, violent, watered-down version of the Iliad. That's a 3 out of 5 score. Disagree, agree? This is like rapid fire, agree with the critics or not.
This felt very audience-based. And I think we touched on this right before we started, but Brian and I were talking about the impact of how this movie was not called just Achilles. It was called Troy, and that was me thinking they just simply made this because they knew it could be a big blockbuster for audiences to go see, and for audiences alone. It wasn't for critics. It wasn't for Oscar bait. It wasn't for anything massively game-changing. And they called it Troy because it was simple to say. It was easy to remember. It was very of the time where you have movies like Gladiator. I don't know when Master and Commander came out, but you rattled off a few other movies of the exact same genre, if you will. But I think it was just a simple, purely made for audiences. I don't think it was meant to be some big epic, because I think they could have done a lot of a completely different movie if they were going that direction. So.
Jonathan Romney of the Independent UK, wooden horse, wooden acting, wouldn't bother if I were you.
It's one of the greatest reviews I've ever read.
Wooden acting.
Wouldn't.
I've read that Brad Pitt's performance was actually praised here, and I think this is one of his weakest performances. That's just me, but so we get some wooden acting here. How about? I think I just saw, The New Yorker. I like to read The New Yorker. David Denby, harsh, serious, and both exhilarating and tragic. The right tonal combination for Homer. So there's a, these are back and forth. They're not all negative. There's positives here. Yeah, there's a few of them. Nick, thoughts on any of those critic sort of summaries there?
I don't know. I just think they need to just loosen up a little bit, man. I think everybody just needs to chill out a little bit.
Hey, we should read the critics' consensus. Remember how we talked about how good of copywriting that was? Let's read it. A brawny, entertaining spectacle, but lacking emotional resonance. So that's like not a bad or good.
Yeah,
review.
I think that's perfectly sums it up, minus that last part. I think it has great emotional resonance, but that's just me. We're gonna get into that a little bit.
So to answer your question,
yes.
having read a couple of those, just kind of cold reads there, just to sort of introduce it a bit, I would say that the critics seem to just not be hot or cold on it. I would say maybe the movie just doesn't have a lot of subtext, perchance, or maybe it just doesn't do anything groundbreaking or new, or maybe it's just a vehicle to deliver spectacle and CGI, and maybe it's coming off of it. Like I said, Gladiator was a huge hit. And hey, let's get in on some of this war, because we don't see war epics like this as often now as we did in the 90s and aughts. And then I think audiences appreciated what it was, because it is an achievement of a film. I mean, it's huge, and it's got some great actors and characters and stuff in it. So I guess I would say it's hard to describe why they disagree, because they don't disagree as highly as they have before in our other movies.
Yeah, sure. Sure, yeah, I don't really, and speaking of not really disagreeing, I don't really disagree with anything you said there, honestly. I mean, once again, I think a lot of this is going to come down to, I think you are right. I think there's very little, subtext in this film. I think, everything is pretty much at face value. And I think it's a movie that's pretty easy to follow, and, it kind of holds your hand a little bit as it takes you through the story, and not in a way like Twilight does or some shit like that,
The Greatest Showman.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a whole
Brian's
different
third
can of
favorite
worms.
film.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yep. Catch him on the right night. All right, let's talk about the theme of this movie. This is something we always like to bring up. What do we feel like the theme of this movie was? I mean, I don't think it's super once again, nothing in this movie is really like super hard to figure out. It's not a lot of layers here. But what did you guys feel about the theme here?
Yeah, theme. I mean, I feel like you are more familiar with this movie and have watched it more often, and you did enjoy it a lot more than I did. So I don't know if you want to start. Do you have thoughts on the theme while I kind of formulate my
Sure.
my thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the theme is kind of like, I mean, or at least the huge theme is just sort of like the idea of immortality and heroism, and how, and prioritizing what you want to do with your life. I mean, I think it's just something that's very interesting, like that, kind of the pivotal moment in the movie is where Achilles makes the decision to, either stay and like live a good life, like guaranteed with like a woman he loves and a family, and, or he can go die in this war, and he chooses to go die in this war because, because that makes him sort of like immortal. Right. And that theme carries through, that kind of gets brought up in dialogue throughout the movie a lot about like remembering your name and, that kind of stuff. So that was kind of, I felt like at least a huge overarching theme. But there's probably more to it than that.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of strong theme vibes from this movie. One that I did that I liked a lot, and maybe I'm highlighting because it's something that I tend to latch onto, but it's this theme of the gods. It's this theme of sort of destiny and fate being out of your hands. They're always talking about, do the gods favor you? Do the gods curse you? What are you doing to please the gods? And it's always like everything's in their hands, but then you've got a couple of key characters in the movie who question that. I think Hector questions it, and I think Achilles, to a certain extent, they both kind of make some comments like,
I think Achilles absolutely questions it.
Yeah.
Because he's going back and forth with, like, I don't care to be with the gods or whatever it is, but he's like, I feel like I was forced to be touched by the gods, if you will, when he was younger or whatever. And he has this cult following that he has to live up to, and he's making that choice to just live through that. But I think the theme was more of a question of, like, what are you fighting for me? Like, these guys are either fighting for the gods or their country or their families or their whatever it is, but like it just bounced so far back and forth between those things. I think it was just that simple question of what are you fighting for? What do you represent? What are you doing this for?
There you go. I think you hit it. Are you fighting for yourself?
Yeah.
Or are you fighting for someone else?
Yeah.
There we go. That's a big kernel for this movie.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
That's a nice one. Thank you to Dalmore for sipping on here tonight.
Potentially bullet rye as well. We'll see how the palate changes as we go here.
Sure. It's the Portwood. Nothing less. Okay. You're listening to Critical Mess. We're talking about Troy. So, okay, I think I just want to kind of, we're going to have to flip the script, right? But before we do that, I feel like we haven't quite gone into enough detail about what we did and didn't like about this movie. So I think I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, like the overall, because I think your rating is not terrible, but it's lower. I want to hear your detractions. I want to talk about what I liked about it, and Grizz, I want to just hear your opinions too about why you rated it pretty high too. Honestly, you were closer to me than Brian.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely, yeah.
So let's just start talking about that.
I'm going to say if there's ever a case of a movie that didn't really do anything wrong, but it didn't do anything exceptional to me. It didn't do anything that I was like, oh, this is it. I mean, this movie, like, I watch the movie and I don't go, oh, that's a terrible movie. I go, well, that was a movie, and I can't say anything else about it. I mean, it was that hard to figure out a theme for me. Another thing about this movie is just the feel of it. Have you guys ever seen those things where they do like the color palette of a movie? So it's like, Grizz, you've probably seen these being a designer. It's like every single frame of the movie is summed up in one color, and the entire spectrum of the movie from start to finish, you see like the color palette of the movie. So like, for instance, if you were to see one for the Last Jedi, like the last third of it would be like red, because there's all the crate battle.
Mostly black and
that kind of thing. This movie, if they were to make a spectrum of this movie, I mean, it's literally just the color of sand from start to finish. I never have any diversity in scene and feel. It's such just a slog through the desert to me. And I know there's other movies like that. I mean, you could say the same thing about Raiders of the Lost Ark, maybe, is one of the ones I thought, or The Mummy, but not really, because those movies have a little bit more diversity and scope. So that was just something that didn't lend very much to the movie for me.
Which is hilarious for our listeners. We are watching the movie in silence in the background, and as Brian says this, they show a big old landscape of a desert in the perfect beige color palette. No, I agree. I mean, it's tough. I actually give this movie a lot of credit because it came out a few years after Gladiator, which was an outrageously beautiful film, both acting and visuals and everything like that. It had grit. It had that dirtiness to it, that these people were gladiators. They were in the, everything. So they pulled this movie from the exact same thing, but I think they went way too clean, way too shiny. Everything. The CG actually looked pretty impressive. I was actually shocked by how well this aged for 20 years old or 19 years old. But yeah, it is a tough movie to kind of watch. It did feel a little mundane, but I feel like I was pulled into the world pretty well. Like when it came to the small, medium, large shots of just the huge landscapes, and the battle scenes were actually super impressive. I couldn't see like massive chunks of repeated soldiers. It all felt pretty real.
Yeah, they did a good job.
And then the hard part was just a lot of close-ups on a lot of characters back and forth going in. I think they did pretty well with the story of telling each of these people, because it showed this huge story of Troy, trying to take over this huge conglomerate, trying to take over more land, destroying and conquering and all these things. But they told these personal stories within, especially with Achilles and his mother and all these people. So,
let me just say one more comment before I throw it back to you, Nick. I wrote this down. I'm bored and I don't care about anyone. That sums up my reaction to this movie.
I mean, that's fair. I don't. The characters aren't super interesting, but then again, we're telling a very old story here. It's not the characters just aren't. They're kind of allegorical in a lot of ways. They're not highly nuanced characters. But let me start talking a little bit about why I really like this movie, because I really do, and I always have. To me, this movie just feels really big. I sort of said this earlier, but the movie just feels really big. It just feels like a big blockbuster movie that they spent a lot of money on. It looks expensive, and I like that. I like big, expensive movies. So I think they're just fun. Splashy, just splashing a bunch of money around to make a badass historical movie. That's just fun. That's fun to me.
A lot of location shots, which I respect.
Yes, for sure. And I think this movie actually did an awesome job of to me, it seemed like it was almost like inspiration for something like Game of Thrones, like the way it shot like all the the cityscapes and the kind of the drone shots, I guess, back then. It was a while ago, so I don't know if they're helicopter shot or models, or maybe they're models. I don't know. Anyways, it was cool the way they did it, and Game of Thrones did it very similarly to how they did a lot of that kind of camera work in this movie. So I thought that was very cool. I think this movie is actually written pretty well. I think it's actually written really well in a lot of ways. I think there's definitely some bad lines of dialogue, but I actually really enjoy some of those bad lines of dialogue, just ironically. I mean, my obviously my favorite. I'm going to just go ahead and
Go for it.
and bring up now.
Go for it. What
You
is
sack of wine.
it? Oh yeah, he's like cussing him out.
Yes.
It's like, instead of piece of shit, you sack of wine. I laughed at that.
Oh man, it was so cringy and fun.
Here's what I'm not buying from Hector. He says the code he's lived by all his life: honor the gods, love your woman, defend your country. I'm not buying that.
God, woman, country, man.
Nobody loved their woman in this time. I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
romantic
even
love did not
Achilles,
exist.
Even Achilles brought that chick back to his tent. And
This is all property. This is booty from war. This is, there's no love your woman. I'm sorry, but
They're just trying to resonate with that conservative crowd.
yeah.
God, woman, country.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think there was respect for women, because you had Hector was protecting that woman, saying, go down through these tunnels and go out. So there was the respect there, but there was no, you could still tell that they took a back seat, which has to be historical. Women were probably not a massive
this
part
time,
in
decision making, or you know what I mean.
You
So I
protected
think,
your woman so your progeny could exist.
Yeah,
that's the only reason.
So I think they held pretty true to that. So I can't knock them for that. So,
Well, all right.
I just want to point out that you said Game of Thrones. I'm
yes,
really
yes.
glad you said that, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. But
Oh, sure.
yes, totally agree with that.
Let me just say a couple other things, and then we can move on. I don't want to just gush about this movie, but another thing I really like about this movie is, to me, it doesn't really ever drag, and I think that's like insane for a movie that's as long as this movie is. It just holds my interest the whole time. There's interesting things continue to happen. There's not a lot of, and it moves, at a good speed for me, at least. And I really like, all of the action. There's a lot of good action in this movie. I don't know how many kind of set piece action sequences there are, but there's a lot for a movie. I mean, it's 5 or 7 or I don't know. There's a bunch. I really like the cast is awesome. I love the actors in this movie. And I actually, conversely to what you said, I kind of like the setting. It's like very like Lawrence of Arabia. It feels sort of old school. I just like, I don't know. I kind of like the setting.
I didn't say I don't like the setting, because I actually have a list here of other movies that I'm comparing this to, and one of them is Lawrence of Arabia. Great movie. And I like the setting, but I guess I don't maybe like how it was shot and edited, perhaps.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
It didn't feel diverse enough for me. It didn't sweep, because Lawrence of Arabia sweeps me into an exotic land. And why doesn't this movie do that to me? I can't really put my finger on it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, see, I guess it does for me. I get that.
Sure,
I get
that's
that
subjective.
feeling. Yeah, and I can't. Yeah, like I said, say exactly why. But anyways, I want to hear some about your detractions of this fine film.
Well, and again, I don't have. It's not so much that I have a lot of detractions. It's just that I don't have anything to add
very
to
mediocre. You think
Yeah.
it's just
it.
yeah.
I guess I will say, for me, Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt is an interesting person. Man, he's been so well known for decades. I mean, Thelma and Louise is the first thing I saw him in. I think that might have been his first feature film, performance. And I love Brad Pitt, but I hate him in. I don't want to say hate. He doesn't do anything for me in serious roles. Brad Pitt shines in comedic roles. He is hilarious in comedic roles.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was just perfection for him. And
so
his
good.
Role, everything, yeah.
I mean, Ocean's 11, stuff like that.
What was that Sandra Bullock movie, The Lost City or something? Isn't that what that was called?
Oh, yeah.
Like a year or two ago. Brad Pitt he was
Lost City of Z or
he had
something.
just kind of I think it was just like The Lost City or something. I don't remember. It
Yeah,
was something like that.
Lost City, yeah.
Doesn't matter. But Brad Pitt was hilarious in that movie.
I haven't even seen that.
Yeah,
He pops in to save the day or something like that.
He's great. He's excellent.
He's even like Bullet Train was just like blah, but he was pretty good in that because he was comedic. And then Babylon. I don't know if you guys have seen Babylon from last year. Very divisive movie, but he was one of the best parts of that movie. He was really funny in it. And I'm not saying he's slapstick. He's sort of a serious character, but he's not melodramatic like that. You guys, Brad Pitt is playing Chris Hemsworth playing Achilles. Yes or no?
That's a great comparison there. I thought Brad Pitt did really well for this role, but there were some weird, cringy dialogue lines that I feel like he was forcing to say.
Well, he had that like British accent.
Yeah, he had that awkward. I don't know what that accent was.
We're gonna get into this.
Okay, great.
And we're gonna get into accents.
Yeah.
All right. So, but characters, I'm going to say Sean Bean, wasted as Odysseus in this movie. That guy is a force on screen. Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, every movie that he dies in, GoldenEye.
Yeah.
I mean, he is so good, and he was just kind of wasted in this movie. Brian Cox killed it as much as he could with this character. But some of the other, like Brendan Gleeson, is that his name? Not Brendan Gleeson. Yeah. He was, he's like whatever, And Orlando Bloom, I don't know. There's a lot of people in this movie, but not a lot of them did much for me. Eric Bana was just like boring.
I'm a big sucker for Eric Bana.
I like the guy.
I love his acting, but yeah, he was a little bit dry in this. But yeah, what is Bean? This is right after all of the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yep.
He did this immediately.
This
after.
is 2004. This would have been his next feature film after that.
Dang.
Well, and he was only in the first Lord of the Rings.
But
spoilers, sorry. But just a couple more, Nick. I'll say that some of the fight scenes, they didn't do it for me. It was shaky cam.
Which ones did you not like? I'm curious.
I'll say any fight scene with Brad Pitt was really, really good. The way he would, the choreography and how he would deal with it between him and Hector, that was by far the best.
It was
in the movie.
You have to give that guy a lot of respect for the way he was handling that sword,
Man,
like an absolute boss.
The way he's spinning his shield around and using little divots to put his spear in and all that stuff.
He was handling it like a demigod.
Yeah. I feel like they put all their. You're like a baller. I feel like they put all their time into his action scenes, and especially that one with Hector. But all the rest of them, to me, were just like almost like there were a lot of bad cuts, and people would get like slaughtered. But then I don't know. It's almost like, is this rated R, PG-13? I didn't know what was going on. So it was a lot of shaky cam close-ups and then really wide shots. There weren't a lot of medium, long takes, with that exception of Hector and Achilles.
But Achilles is in most of the fight scenes.
Yeah, he's in most of them, but I think that the thing about the fight scenes, you don't want any of them to take over the film. I think a lot of them were at a base level, just a fight or a battle or whatever it was, and then when it mattered for the story or the character, then Hector and Hector and Achilles would go at it, and that felt like it had more weight. I think that's why I appreciate it more, because whenever they went to blow, you're like, oh shit, these guys are really going at it, and there's a reason for why they're going at it.
I just feel like a movie like Braveheart, which has similar types of big battle fight scenes, it's the editing and the pacing and the direction of close, medium, long, close, just all the intercuts of the. I don't know. For this movie, I had issues with some of the fight scenes. And then the last thing I'll say in this section is, to me, this in theory is a good movie, but in practice it's just not. And again, I can't point to one thing and go, this is a huge cinema sin. You know, it's just the movie does not add up to more than the sum of its parts for me.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. For me, I mean, I just thought some of the action sequences were just rather excellent. Like the one actually we see on screen right now, where Achilles is assaulting the sort of Temple of Apollo with like 50 guys.
He just quickly throws his shield behind his back, and the arrow hits
It's so gangster.
the back of the shield.
It's just
I think that
so
those little tiny
gangster.
scenes just show the definition of him as a demigod, and the epic of him being this demigod that is not, like, nobody can kill him. He's unstoppable. And so I think that's the coolest thing about this movie, is those little tiny snippets of just his character building and him having to deal with that as like, I am not going to stop until I go and go and go and go until I absolutely perish.
Yeah, he's a war machine, for sure. Yeah, and there's just a couple of great lines of dialogue, I think, right around this scene. Like, I love one of my favorite lines of dialogue in this movie, and I have a few, and we'll touch on them. But just the black sail,
Oh, yeah,
it's
the one
Achilles.
black sail.
Yeah,
That's kind of baller.
it's just kind of every time I see this movie, I'm just like, yes, it is Achilles. He's running up. Anyways, the other great line in the scene is that the big dude, that Ajax guy, when he's like, row you whores. He's like, Greeks are dying. He just like kicks that guy. Yeah, I don't know. I really like that stuff. So anyways, obviously I can keep going, but I'm not going to. Grizz, anything else you want to say about things you liked about this movie? Things did it for you?
I don't know. Overall, I would strongly agree with your note earlier, Nick, about how you were kind of captivated, or your attention was still held throughout the entire film. I would strongly agree with that. I was always within it, and I can't tell. I don't think it was because of the visuals alone. I think the soundtrack was unbelievable, like the orchestra and how they used that with the storyline and at the battles. I had to note that was James Horner, and I had to look him up, but he has an outrageous portfolio, and I now know
the
why.
music? Yeah, can we do a little aside here about the music?
Yeah, I think I have to.
Yeah, let's just
But
talk about it for a
his
second.
portfolio, and I'm just going to rattle them off really quickly.
Oh, I could rattle them off. I've got them memorized.
Aliens, Field of Dreams, Apollo 13, Braveheart, Beautiful Mind,
Titanic, he finally won an Oscar for.
Yeah, Wrath of Khan, Titanic, Troy, obviously, and then it's unbelievable that he had. I didn't even think about it when I was just like, this is an incredible, like,
We
just
lost him
beautiful.
too soon, man. We lost him too soon.
It's incredible that, like, it just felt it felt like a pretty efficient movie. I mean, though it was very long. I think that's what kept my attention, was just that constant, drive to pair that exactly with the scenes that I'm watching, whether dramatic or action or whatever it is.
Did you know that the original guy who scored the movie, they screened it with audiences, and the audiences it didn't test well, so they completely fired him and cut all his music and gave James Horner 4 weeks to completely do the entire score.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah,
Savage.
didn't know that.
Baller.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the music in this movie is mostly excellent. I think the orchestral stuff is really good.
Very Gladiator inspired.
Very Gladiator inspired. I think what my subtitles called ethereal chanting of the woman just being like, I don't even know I can't even do it. Ay.
That sort of
It's-
mournful, exotic.
Yeah, I just don't. It's kind of it's an interesting sound. I'll just put it that way. I think it's a little silly, but anyways, music is pretty damn good. Other than that strange little wailing woman.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Hey, so can we real quick talk about the name of this movie?
Sure.
Troy. Fitting. I don't like it though.
Strictly for marketing purposes.
And we were talking before the show about
Yep.
that, and you kind of enlightened me there because my general thought was they should have called this movie Achilles, because I'm watching this movie and I'm going, who the hell's the main character of this movie, and then also who's the antagonist, and those can be kind of two different things, or who's the hero, and I honestly didn't know half the time. Is it Hector? Is it Achilles? Is it fucking Paris? Like, who is it? Because there's all these storylines that are always weaving around, and I'm not sure who. And you don't like. That's another thing. I hate Achilles in this movie. He's an asshole.
He comes full. He does a 180.
I hate him for most of the movie.
He becomes such a sweetheart at the end.
Yeah.
He goes back for his woman. He dies
Sure.
for her, man.
Yeah, you're right. He does have a good arc, but I thought I'm supposed to be like, because Hector sort of does the altruistic thing where he's got to cover for his brother, and he ultimately sacrifices himself for the mistake his brother makes, and he's got a lot of screen time. And I guess I had trouble with who to latch onto in this movie. Who's the villain? Who's the antagonist, protagonist? So, but it ends up being Achilles. This is a movie ultimately about the rise and fall of Achilles. And so I thought, hey, they should call the movie Achilles. And then Grizz, you were like, but people don't know how to pronounce that when they read it. And
It's not easy to read. It's not easy to see on a billboard. But
Yeah.
Troy is just pure marketing. The studio was like, no, we're going to call it Troy.
I just feel like the Achilles tendon. It's such in our vernacular. Anyway, so but can I just say I came up with 5 alternate names for this movie.
Yeah, lay him on us.
In
New side
obviously,
quest for the
These will
podcast.
only make
Here we
sense
go.
if you've seen the movie. But number 1, Achilles tendencies.
Boom.
Yes or no?
That's an absolutely no.
Number 2, these are not
I
serious. Number 2, Taken 4, the Aegean aggressor. Yeah, kind of some Taken vibes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tekken?
We'll
Tekken
take. I
4?
mean, yeah. It's like 2.5 stars.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, Game of Thrones, a song of fire and sand.
Yeah. I mean, my feeling on that. I
I'll
think
throw
that's
one
I
in
think
there.
you've-
How
I
about
think you've hit that.
beige?
Yeah, beige.
Uh-huh.
Number 4, The Assassination of Achilles by the coward Paris.
Oh, that's a nice one. I like that one.
By the way, have you guys seen that movie?
I did. It's like one of those movies that it was like 3 a.m.
I
and
haven't
I'm
seen
just
it
kind
yet.
of just watching
Wait,
on
what
the
movie?
couch and
The
very
Assassination
slow.
of
Jesse James
Jesse
by the
James
coward,
by the coward
Robert Ford.
Robert Ford.
Mm.
It's supposed to be good.
It's I think
Anyway.
it is good. Maybe.
The Assassination of Achilles by the coward Paris. Yeah. Number 5, Blonde Heart.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay. All right.
That's pretty good.
Better names than Troy. I
Not
think.
bad.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I can make you some movie covers, and we'll just
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's market it.
Do you want to be a copywriter?
Nick, I'm so glad. See, if you would have come up with 5, then I wouldn't have even said mine because yours would have been so much better than mine.
No, give your don't. No.
I see
those-
Nick
those were-
crumpling
those
up
were
a piece
good.
of paper off
Really?
to the side right now with all his name titles.
I know. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just stuff it
that's
right
high
back in my
praise.
bag.
It's high
Yeah.
praise coming from Nick.
All right. So okay, I think we've done a good job of, covering our positions on this movie. Shall we flip it a little bit here and talk
should flip
about
it.
the other way around? Flipping the script, our classic segment. I will start with something. It's kind of a big thing, and it takes the movie down pretty substantially for me. I can't say exactly how many points, but it's kind of a pretty big problem. And I think I think the ending of this movie is kind of the worst part of the movie. Like probably about the last 20 minutes or so, are not.
The Trojan horse.
Yeah, kind of
montage.
right when that gets, because it just becomes such a. I mean, boring. Just obviously, this is what's gonna. You know exactly.
It's like an
what's-
afterthought, kind of.
It is. It just in it. There's no tension kind of in the end. Really, I mean, there's kind of the Achilles stuff where he gets killed. As you see Brad Pitt just on screen here, just glistening.
I mean, when
Just
if
buck
I'm flipping the
naked.
script,
This
this
is
is what I
just-
like about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, goodness gracious, you can see why this made half a bill. I mean, yeah, this
One
this-
bill for each pack of 6.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just ask, guys. I mean, has Brad Pitt ever been hotter than this movie? Ever been, or is this peak Brad?
This is peak Brad.
I think it might be.
This is
I
peak
don't know. Have
blonde
you
heart.
seen him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I mean, he's.
I mean,
I mean,
with a
he
cigarette in his hand,
maintains,
He's
the
more of
exact
a
same.
he's more of a badass in Once Upon a Time, and more kind of grizzled, you know.
Oh, for sure.
But,
It's a sequel to Troy.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no denying it. Handsome man. Anyway,
What else you got?
sorry, Brad made me lose my train of thought. What else did I not like about this movie? I did not like. Obviously, Orlando Bloom is just a turkey. He is one of the nation's top turkeys, I would say, and he's hard to watch. He's hard to watch. And
Poor guy.
he's hard to even watch.
The entire
ironically.
room is nodding right now, just like with a smirk on their
Including
face.
April.
Including April in the
Yep.
background, yeah.
Yeah, he is just a turkey tom, and I don't like him very much.
Yeah, I think in the hardest part for this movie, and the one thing I kind of dock it for is some of those lines of dialogue are really cringe, but the hard part when the direction was and there's a battle scene going on or something or whatever it is, and it pans to someone that has a loved one in the scene or a son, and then they get real close on their face, and they're just trying to react to what is happening with facial expressions, and they feel like they're having to fart in a public place. Like they're just struggling to figure out what feeling they're trying to feel. It was just really awkward, but Orlando Bloom wins the award for most awkward for sure.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to throw one more thing out there. Last thing, because I did want to circle back to this. Accents. What the fuck is going on with the accents in this movie? It's insane. It's like Brendan Gleeson's allowed to have like a Scottish accent.
No. Who even has a way more egregious Scottish accent is the dude from Braveheart, the dad in Braveheart.
Oh, yeah.
What's his name?
I don't know. But yes, I know.
But he
never
he's
left the
straight
Braveheart set.
Scottish.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
He's just straight.
I've never seen him in anything but Braveheart in this.
I swear, Diane Kruger goes like Russian a couple times.
Is she Hector's wife? Or is she
No, she's,
the girl who gets kidnapped?
She's Helen.
Okay, she's Helen. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she's got a little kind of a Russian accent going on occasion.
Brian
sometimes.
Cox, of course, is always has a Scottish accent, even in Succession, you know.
Yeah, and then we've got these like strange Brit. Like, what is Brad Pitt's accent? It's sort of like this strange English.
No, I'll tell you
British
exactly what his accent is. Chris Hemsworth.
He worked 4
yeah,
months on
sure.
that accent.
Like
No,
I'm convinced.
not
Like
really.
I had
Not
this on
very
a side
good.
screen, and I would hear it, and I would look over, and I would expect to see Chris Hemsworth, and I'd forget that it wasn't him. Like it was spot on, Chris Hemsworth, who probably wasn't even in anything yet when this came out. So it's kind of unfair to say that. But
So maybe Chris Hemsworth owes his
Yeah.
career to Brad Pitt.
sure, you could say that,
You could.
and a six pack.
Yeah.
I'll also say, did you guys recognize the guy? He was just on screen. He was one of the other general guys from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Donovan.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, rare Donovan appearance. And then the chick. This is the last reference I'll get. The Hector's wife.
Yeah, the one with that. She just looks like she's so worried all the time.
Did
Is
you
there ever a
recognize her?
second she doesn't look just super worried?
Do you remember the other infamous
I don't-
role she plays?
I don't know who she is. No.
Deep Blue Sea. She's that.
Oh,
she's
shoot,
that
right.
super
Is
unlikable
Deep
girl.
Blue Sea on our list?
No, but I
I
feel like
thought
it got.
it was.
I feel like we.
Might
I feel like
be.
we looked it up and it didn't meet our criteria.
Probably. I love that movie.
We all love it.
Sure
Oh, it's so
about
good.
that.
Let's check.
It
Let's
might
check.
be on the list, but
I'll just real quick flip the script and say I'll just harken back to a couple things I said. I loved the fight scene between Hector and Achilles. Very, very good. And then, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Deep Blue Sea, by the way, a 60-39. So
Hey, that works.
yeah. as
wait,
long
wait,
as
wait,
this-
wait,
that
wait.
holds.
60 critic, 39 audience.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Oh,
What?
put that on the list. We got to get into that.
How is that only 39 audience? What is wrong with
Are
people?
you looking at the right Deep Blue Sea?
I might have seen that
I mean,
twice
I think
in
so.
theaters.
1999 sci-fi, hour and 45.
I really believe I saw that twice in movie theaters when it came
LL
out.
Cool J. That's the one. Thomas Jane.
Thomas Jane, yeah, was
Yeah.
the
Thomas Jane. Wonder what happened to him.
Boy, add that to the list.
Yeah, man. Okay.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with flipping the script. Anything else? You know.
Grizz, what did you not like about this movie? I mean, you've already touched on a couple things.
Yeah,
but-
a couple things, but I really don't think those were killing it for me as much as it was for Brian. But I did really enjoy this movie. I think it was fun. I do remember liking it in theaters, so I just 20 years later, it still holds up for me.
All right, this is Critical Mess. I'm here with Brian, I'm here with Grizz. We're talking about Troy. And we're moving on. We're moving on to our newly named, but still very classic segment.
Slow burn.
Slow burn.
Slow burn, baby.
We're going to
Just
burn
like
it.
just like Dalmore.
But the irony here, though, is that let's not slow burn because I got a lot of random shit to go over here.
I have one more segment I want to do too that I spent some time on.
Oh, you have
so
a new segment?
I do.
Brian's Corner?
2 new segments.
Okay. Well, what shall we do first?
Slow burn.
Okay. Slow burn it is. And guys, please feel free to jump in with your own slow burn fodder here. I know it wasn't the first line of dialogue in the movie, but I believe it was the first line of on-screen actor delivering the dialogue. You know, it wasn't voiceover. A good day for the crows. It's one of the most gangster opening lines to any film I've ever seen. It was like one of my favorite opening lines to any movie ever.
Is that Brian
easily.
Cox?
It absolutely is the master himself. It is Brian Cox, and I just love that line.
One of the best opening lines to a movie. I'm going to put that up there.
Yeah.
Good.
Was it dialogue over a landscape shot?
That's when he's meeting the other
Yeah,
king,
it's when
right?
exactly. He's
Yeah.
meeting the other king, and
Yeah.
he's just about to just murk all his guys. So
Nice.
it's like, yeah, good day for the crows. It's just good shit. And shortly after that, I just want to point out, we talked a little bit about before the podcast, but the scene that happens right after that, where with Boagrius, and it's kind of the champion against champion for the instead of fighting the full battle with both armies, and Brad Pitt just absolutely smokes that 7 foot tall, gigantic dude, and it's just a legendary kind of scene, and it's kind of reluctance to do it, and the way it kind of all comes about, and he's like not even on the battlefield, like the way it all comes together. I just feel like it's a great scene, and I what are your guys' thoughts on that particular scene?
What stuck out to me about that scene was they cut to Brad Pitt laying naked in a tent with a couple of ladies. And prior to the movie, it said rated R for nudity and some other things. So at that moment, I thought, well, we're going to get some nudity. And we don't. We never do. So I take offense to this movie being marked R for nudity.
Well, you do get the Brad Pitt, the dick root, like you ever heard that term? It's like the lines that go down.
Based on Brian's
Oh.
face, he's never heard that
Yeah,
term.
okay,
It's
I didn't know
it's
it was called
just
that.
above the top of your
That's not nudity.
pubes. It's not, but it's
You get a lot
You
of
could go
side-
to the neighborhood pool and see that.
it doesn't feel very PG-13. It doesn't feel very PG-13.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was my takeaway from that.
Yeah. Are there
scene.
no? There are. Doesn't Helen? I believe. Doesn't she? I
No.
believe she derobes.
You get some side
early
cheek
on.
from Pitt, I think, in the bed, and that's
No,
about it.
You don't.
So,
Nick.
Yeah. It's
Sorry,
it's
Brian.
only cheek.
yeah, I am against nudity in films unless it truly has a purpose in
Wait.
any way, shape, or form.
So you don't
But,
you don't watch subtitled films, animated films, or nudity in films?
correct.
What the?
Yep.
You are deprived.
Sure. I'm not a 13-year-old boy, but yeah.
Subtitles? Come on. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep marking those tallies just
I
to
know.
razz you.
Just rack them up. Yeah.
We're way off
We're
track.
burning
Nick.
slow. We're burning slow. All right. Priam. I was getting Biden vibes. Anybody else?
Who's Priam again?
Priam, yeah.
Yeah. Peter O'Toole.
Peter O'Toole. Yeah.
Yeah. There he is.
Priam from Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
I thought he was dead in multiple scenes where he just looked straight
He
in the
look-
camera, and I
he
think
looks like Joe Biden with long hair.
I thought he passed away a few times.
Doesn't he?
He sure does.
He sure does, and he kind of acts like him too, just a little bit, but way more coherent.
Yeah, they had way too many close-ups of that man on screen, just teary-eyed and
Kissing the hands
Being
of
super-
Achilles
yeah.
and all. It's like, all right, enough. Slow burn.
All right, slow burn. We're gonna keep it burning, super slow. Man, I just want to hit a couple lines of Orlando Bloom dialogue. He goes into that girl and he's like, "Cousin, your beauty grows with each new moon." And I just wrote, "Weird." Right.
it was totally a thing back then, I'm sure. That's
Strange.
very strange.
Weird.
When he goes on that rant with Kruger, with Helen, about, we could go away from here and I could hunt deer and rabbit and I'll feed us. You remember that part?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the second he walked outside of that castle, he'd be like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I don't know how to survive.
Yeah, that just always
Not good dialogue, and that's kind of not his fault. But if Brian Cox said it, it would have been great. So maybe it is his fault.
Can I give a great Brian Cox line?
Please.
The man wants to die. Great.
Yep.
Perfect delivery by Mr. Cox. Yes.
He's talking about Achilles.
Yes.
When Achilles, the Black Sail,
Yes.
goes and storms the temple.
Yes.
Good line.
This movie, all right, slow burn, feels to me like a Ridley Scott movie. Anybody else feel that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we've got the parallel with Gladiator.
What else did Wolfgang
But
Peterson do?
I
He
think
did Perfect
it's
Storm.
more than that.
He did Master and Commander, right?
Yeah,
It-
yeah.
Okay, so
right.
this isn't
Yeah.
like Wolfgang Petersen's only like historical epic. This is his wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
fair to say he's done
I
this kind of
do
thing
feel
before.
like he does channel Ridley Scott, though.
Yeah, and I do mean that, obviously those movies are similar, but just even the way, just the shots and just the pacing and everything, it's very Ridley. Okay, we're in the midst of our wonderful segment, Slow Burn. We, here's my next Slow Burn topic. The number 2 guy, Achilles' number 2 guy. Opinions on his performance?
Brilliant. I love the guy.
Yeah.
I actually
Those-
thought I was going to hate him, and he was way better than like Orlando Bloom.
That dude was ready to die for
I liked him.
his man Achilles.
Yeah, I surprisingly liked him.
Like a little puppy, just following Achilles around the entire
There
film.
he is. He's on screen right there.
Those bright blue eyes, gorgeous.
The other one.
The other one, yeah.
I got one rapid fire.
Mm-hmm.
Has Brian Cox ever not played an absolute badass? And what's your favorite Brian Cox performance?
You're gonna have to rattle off some Brian Cox movies. for
Mine
me,
is
'cause I'm-
Uncle Argyle from Braveheart. I mean, if you need a few,
I'll
I'm gonna need some.
rattle some off for you, Grizz.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, Brian Cox is in some good shit.
have you seen Succession?
Oh yeah, yep.
That could be your answer. That's an acceptable answer.
Gosh, he's in so many movies.
I did watch that show, and I really was not a huge fan. I watched the entire thing, but Brian
Okay.
Cox was great. per
Hey, you
usual.
don't have to answer my question. Just because I ask it doesn't mean it's a good question. But I
Slow
just wanted to put it out there, just to see if there was one I was forgetting about.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking through the list.
The dad from The Campaign. You guys know that one?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, somewhat of an underrated Will Ferrell movie from back in his prime.
Oh yeah, I know. that movie.
yeah.
But I feel like he would play a good mean dad on like so many.
Yeah. He was just an absolute
movies.
piece of shit dad. It was awesome. It was just pure Brian Cox.
Just domineering.
Yes.
Okay, we can move on. No need to answer, Nick.
Yeah, no, sorry, no, I'm just kind of amazed at how many movies Brian Cox is in. It's like, holy shit, he's in like 5 movies a year.
Guy's working.
Yeah, he is a working actor. Anyway, okay, how about let's not quite move on from Brian Cox yet, because I do want to hit a couple more key lines of dialogue. It's just so good. Oh, here's what I'll answer your question.
Yeah.
Here's my favorite Brian Cox performance as of late. The McDonald's advertisements. Have you heard those? The new ones where he's like, ba-da-ba-ba-da.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
That's your favorite.
Yeah.
The McDonald's commercial.
Yeah. I think he kills those.
I respect that.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway. We're in advertising, right?
Yeah, of course. I know. I do. I'm saying that
Great selection.
fully earnestly.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, when the like guttural scream he lets out when Brendan Gleeson is killed.
When he's like charged. Yeah.
It's so good.
That was really good.
That was a really
Like it doesn't even
Really
ramp
good.
up. It's just like he starts screaming and it's already at like his maximum scream.
there. So here's a funny thing. Did you know when in the part where Hector is fighting, he thinks he's fighting Achilles,
Mm-hmm.
but he's actually fighting his cousin.
Loved that scene.
I hated that scene,
Oh,
and I'll
man.
tell you why after Nick says his thought.
it's hilarious how they're fighting each other and then they kind of like make a circle around them to watch the fight, and then like one of them gets killed and like they take his helmet off, and it's just hilarious that those guys that were just in the midst of war are just standing there.
Thank you.
And they're just like, yeah, we'll just check this out for a minute, and then and I'll stab this guy here in a minute, but we're gonna just hang on for a second.
Yeah.
And we're gonna just see who's under that mask. You would think someone might just like stick somebody with a sword while they're just standing
That's
there.
a bad scene. I literally had that written down. I mean, they're in a full-scale battle,
In a
full-scale war
like everyone just
between
stops.
hundreds and hundreds of people, and two guys happen to get into a fight, and in the course of about 2.5 minutes, everyone's standing around like it's a schoolyard fight, and they're just watching. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I caught on to that immediately, but I just thought the weight of that scene was great. Just what it did to Achilles and how it catapulted the rest of the
Agreed.
movie.
I just think they should have set
That's
it up
why
a
I
little
like
bit
it the
better.
most. Yeah, I agree.
But a great plot point though.
Yes,
a great
perfect.
part of the story.
Yep.
The scene where what's her name? Rose. What's her last name? Byrne.
Who?
The actress in this movie. Isn't that her name?
There's 3 actresses in this movie.
No, the slave girl.
The girl, yeah, the one who Achilles falls in love with.
Rose
falls in
Byrne,
love with.
that's her
Rose
name.
Byrne. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
That's her name. Yeah, when she like pulls the knife on Achilles,
And then they make love right
and then he
after
just
that.
bangs her.
Yeah,
That
And-
is-
And when he starts banging her,
That's
she
hot.
still has the knife to his neck.
It's hot. It is so hot.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I mean, this movie, I feel like it hits, it hits the violence, it hits the sex, it hits that, was it your amygdala or whatever? What's that part of your brain? It's probably not that.
Medulla
but whatever,
oblongata.
that part
I don't
of that
know,
one,
it's
whatever,
not
I don't know. Whatever part of that
hippocampus.
brain that, that those things stimulate this movie.
I mean, sometimes there's a
Good
fine
job.
line between wanting to kill and wanting to,
Yeah, and those early 2000 films just hit it on the head.
that era just really
Yeah, it was just-
touched on it.
Yeah, let's just. I do want to touch on this one more time because I thought it was probably the apex of the movie, and that was the duel with Hector and Achilles. It's an awesome scene in a lot of ways, and I thought for me, like, you were kind of talking about having some trouble kind of like with the character, like who am I rooting for here? Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? And I think to me this movie is, it is the tale of Achilles and Hector and how their story culminates with that scene. And I think that's what makes part of what this movie really good is like the high point of the movie is what should be the high point of the movie. Now there's a lot of other shit going on, as you said, around it that like dilutes some of that story, I think, and I could see how you might think that is a negative, and I get that because it is kind of a long and somewhat bloated movie, but in some ways, but like I said, I think it's pretty well paced, especially for the length.
I think they do a really good job situating that scene exactly where it needs to be in the arc of the movie.
I think it could have been the end, honestly. If they did the Trojan horse first, and then the city's on fire, and then they have Eric Bana and Brad Pitt have their duel inside the walls of the kingdom, and then they battle, he kills Bana. I mean, as much as I love that scene of him tying his legs to the rope and dragging him back to his camp, that's incredible, right?
There was a great sorry.
Well, I just was saying, I agree, but I feel like it seems like that would be the case. But as Nick pointed out earlier, Achilles is the one with the really strong arc, and I think his arc only takes place after that fight.
Yeah.
and I don't
Right.
think you. Put
I'm
that
trying to
fight
find.
at the
I'm trying to
end.
find a way to compress it and do all of it in that same thing.
Yeah.
Which that could be messy, but
It could be rewritten a bit.
But it was very powerful, their fight and how
Yeah.
that whole thing ended, and he's just dragging him away, and he wins, and you just see the father and brother just
Here we go. Here's how you write that. Do you remember how he surprisingly sort of breaks down over Hector's corpse? He has that moment where he like breaks and cries. Achilles, you're like, oh
Right.
shit, like he actually does have some inner stuff. He's not just this perfect, like selfish demigod. If they would have had the fight between him and Hector be at the end and it was more of a reluctant fight, and then he does end up killing Hector, but then he weeps over the corpse right there instead of dragging him off, that's how you write that.
That's an interesting idea. I like that.
This
I
is
like
our new
that.
segment of just rewriting scripts.
Yeah,
That took every ounce of my brain cells. I don't know
Pretty
if I
good.
could pull that off.
We got there.
yeah. McCullough copywriter tonight. We're crushing it. Great. Speaking of copywriting, there's a great line in that scene right after Bana or Hector asks for the like the funeral rites or whatever, and Achilles is like, there are no pacts between lions and men. That is I just wrote next to that, gangster.
Yeah.
That is a gangster line.
Yep. Good
I
line.
like it.
Yeah.
Fun little fact right there for that duel between them, Achilles and Hector. Brad Pitt and Eric Bana had a gentleman's agreement for the actual fight. They did not use stunt doubles. So they
Wow.
went for it. They did the choreography, everything. So they assigned $50 for light blows and $100 for heavy hits, each of them as an agreement. And Brad Pitt ended up paying Eric Bana $750.
Oh, so he did take a beating, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I was really
that's
looking
cool.
on that scene to see if I could see the stunt doubles, and I couldn't.
I really can't in this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because
I
there
think
wasn't
they did
in
a really
that scene.
good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing.
All right. Well, I think we burned it pretty slow. I mean, maybe not super slow.
It was a
but
lukewarm, tepid burn.
Yeah, it was we burned it,
It's burnt.
and I think now we're on to Brian's corner.
Well, I just want to. So with this movie, it was weird because I gave it a 42. I didn't hate it. I definitely didn't like it. So it was hard for me to come up with a way to talk about the movie as objectively as I could. So what I did was I did some comps, like when you're buying a house and you look at comps in the neighborhood to see what the house is worth. It's hard to look at just the house itself.
Yeah.
You got to look at the landscape.
Like
so
that.
what I wanted to do was I wanted to take 5 other war epics that I considered to be very good, and I want to look at each one of them. This will be brief for each one, and I want to talk about this is what makes this movie unique. This is the unique. I use the word kernel a lot. Every movie needs a kernel. That's like the thing that powers the movie. That's the thing that everything else comes from. I don't feel like Troy had a very strong kernel to me. I felt like it was action piece, set piece, action piece, kind of Bad Boys 2, always ratcheting everything up and never taking a moment to breathe or looking at a deeper theme. So I want to look at these 5 movies. I want to ask you guys, number 1, if you've seen the movie. Number 2, if you agree with me that it's a good movie. And number 3, if you have this kind of the same takeaway or if you disagree. And totally you can disagree because I just kind of made this up, right? So these are war epics, and there's a lot of them out there. I listed some of them: Kingdom of God, Alexander, some of these ones that I don't think are very good. But let's look at Gladiator, because that's the one we've kind of been throwing around. Gladiator is definitely a war epic. Same kind of era as this movie. And I would say, to me, the compelling thing about that movie is the revenge story and a very likable hero and a very hateable villain. I did not get a super likable hero and a super hateable villain here. Not that this movie has to have that, but Gladiator had that, and that's what was compelling about it. So, real quick, hot take: did you like that movie, and do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, and I think Gladiator is one of the greatest movies of all time.
I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just kind of, like I said, comps. The second one, The Northman. Okay, The Northman, another war epic. Totally different era, totally different feel, but yet a war epic. I would say The Northman, the thing that really sets that apart is it's super artistic, and it's very unconventional storytelling. So these are things that make the movie unique. Why do we make this movie? Well, those are the reasons. What do you guys think? Thoughts? Have you seen it? Have you not seen it?
I have seen it. I thought it was a little long and drawn out and a little weird, but it was well done, artful. But I would definitely not put it up there with Gladiator by any means. I think this was more enjoyable for me, at least, Troy. Than Northman, but beautiful movie nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm taking Troy over Northman, but not like a whole lot. I think Northman. I just my gut sort of quick rating of Northman would be like probably in the low 70s. Like I enjoyed it. Thought it was pretty good, and the thing was like amazing. But
Yeah.
I also like sometimes the movies. I don't like the difficult movies as much. So,
Well, yeah. I'm probably in the 70s for The Northman as well, but I see why it exists as a unique creative act. And I don't get the same thing from Troy. I don't take something away from Troy to where I can say, this is why this movie exists. Number 3, Braveheart. We've talked about Braveheart. For me, Braveheart, another war epic. I would say the thing I take away from Braveheart is its vast array of diverse and complex characters. There's tons of complicated characters with lots of depth and a super compelling character arc for Robert the Bruce. So, you can take a lot from that movie, but you can at least take that, and that's something that makes that movie worthy of being made. What do you guys think about that movie?
I think it is in the same echelon as Gladiator, although I like Gladiator a little bit better. And I think Troy is not in that echelon, but I think it is I'm saying echelon a lot. It's one echelon below.
Okay. On the scale of echelons,
Yes.
which is a logarithmic scale.
Yes,
Maybe.
it is. Yes, sounds right. Algorithmic, sure. I don't know.
I do like kind of how you're situating the movies. That gives context for sure.
Yeah.
Grizz?
Yeah, I think I had to edge that one above Troy for sure. But another Mel Gibson, The Patriot. That's another great one. I hold highly to a classic war film.
Okay, then what do you take away from that movie? That's kind of what I'm getting at here. It's not so much that I want to say which movie is better. It's that I want to say, like, here's some movies that you can really take something home from. What do you take home from Patriot? What's the? You don't have to answer that if I'm kind of hitting you cold with that, but you brought it up.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's that movie was so large scale to small scale. There was no in between. It was like one or the other, and they went back and forth very well. And I think that's what was interesting. This had a little bit too much of just they zoomed all the way out and they slowly zoomed all the way in, and they went all the way back and they went all the way in. I think that's the hard part about Troy. It doesn't hold up as well as some of those other classics, but classics from 3 years prior.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's not that big of a difference. Two more real quick. Lawrence of Arabia. We've also talked about that one, and I think I've already said what I love about that movie. It transplants me to another place and time instantly. I mean, it's got such a vibe, such an exotic feel to it, and also it's such a supreme technical achievement too. So, thoughts on that?
Lawrence of Arabia, I think, is one of the greatest movies of all time. Also, I mean, you're bringing up a lot of really amazing movies, and I feel like this movie actually had a lot. I mean, for one obvious reason, but a lot of the same kind of vibe. It just felt like that movie. I think it was,
I agree.
It had a lot of just parallels in a lot of. I mean, even just like the length of the movie. They're both just really long movies. I just and I like that because I really like Lawrence of Arabia a lot.
Grizz?
I'm gritting my teeth because I have actually never seen.
Hey, no shade, man.
Lawrence of Arabia.
I only saw it for the first time last year. No
actually
shade.
had tickets to go see it at the IMAX Indy location when they were like re-releasing some older movies, and I'm bummed that I did not get to catch that one.
Check it out. It's like Nick said, it's probably the closest to this movie. But again, I don't know. That's maybe the most nebulous one to me. It just if you said Troy takes you to a far off place, I can't argue with that.
As much
it
as
just
I've
doesn't
heard
for me.
about Lawrence of Arabia, I highly doubt I would rate this higher than, for sure.
And the last one I'll just say as a sample set here is Saving Private Ryan, another war epic. And Saving Private Ryan, to me, what I take away from that is just it immerses you in war. Immersive realism, just so stellarly done in that movie. And again, I'm literally looking at these diamonds of movies just in one facet. You could look at them in a million ways, and they all could have their own podcast episodes. But I just want to point out in this exercise that you can take other movies and you can say instantly, this is what makes this movie great. And I don't get that from Troy. I don't get an instant, this is what this movie is. I just get like, yeah, it's a war epic. But thoughts on that?
You're listing, like Saving Private Ryan, again, it's in that same echelon, that top echelon. You're listing a lot of movies that I would rate in the 90s.
Yeah.
I would argue
heck,
every movie that ever is made should aspire to be in the 90s.
Well, yeah, hell yeah.
And we're talking about why it's not. And that's why I listed that list.
For me, it's not too far.
I really don't think it's
not
that far off. I agree with you, Nick. I think that's the hardest part about this film is I actually remember some iconic, I don't want to say iconic, but I remember very memorable scenes from this film and being like, gosh, that was great. Achilles going in that first battle. Him and his cousin coming out to fight for him and dying, and then his reaction. And then him dragging Banna's body back to the camp and like just watching the reaction of that. What was it? Was it the other guy's wife or sister or cousin or something like that that he had pulled back into the? So things like that I just remember vividly, and I think sadly I remember a lot more from Saving Private Ryan, Gladiator, things like that. But
I remember maybe 2 scenes from Troy. For those 5 I just listed, I remember, except for maybe Lawrence of Arabia, I remember like 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe
get
that's
it.
just me. I don't know.
That's the difference between a 70 and a 90, 95. You know what I mean? It's just that little bit that there's just so much more.
And that was what I hoped to parse out and suss out with this exercise. So I think it helped just to look at comps, for me at least, to justify my 42. So there you go. Brian's Corner. I need a little
it's
jingle.
good. Yeah.
I thought for sure, Nick, we were close to getting him to push his 40 rating up a little bit higher.
I
But
mean,
we've only done it once so far. In
It's
10
not going
episodes.
over 50. It's probably staying at 42, but I'm not like, I'm not entrenched. I'm not like, this movie sucks, so it's whatever.
As we look in the background, this guy, they just showed a huge battle scene, mid-shot, and a guy literally just fell over in the battle. He didn't get hit by anything. He just fell over. I love it.
And I'm not going to take away from
These
the movie
movies,
for that.
even Gladiator had great
Well,
stuff like that.
Braveheart had it too.
Yes.
It all has it.
Yeah.
I think this movie is violent though. I mean, like it's pretty.
My favorite.
Yeah. It's not like super. It's not quite like Game of Thrones level violent, but it's like not far off.
It's
think
not
they-
nearly as violent as 4 of those 5 movies I
Yeah,
just
that's
listed.
true. Yeah, I think they did it just enough
Yeah,
that you're like,
maybe.
it shocked you in the film when you saw it. Like Achilles is going up that hill to I don't know what
The temple.
the sun god temple or whatever it is.
Apollo.
And the Apollo. And then he just he does his move and then he just slashes his sword into the side of the guy. And it goes through his helmet and through the guy's skull. And you just watch the blood come down. And then they do the close up on Brad's face and the one drop of blood comes off his helmet.
I think there are some very
like,
impactful
yeah.
moments of violence in this movie.
I think that's what they
it.
balanced well
Yeah.
here was the impactfulness of these scenes. They did them scarcely enough that you're like, oh, that had a lot of that. Had a
I think I
decent
would
amount of
prefer
weight.
that. I prefer that to just nonstop violence. I think I would prefer just
Yes.
like very few gravitas moments of like a sword directly going through somebody than just like
with,
blood
with some
everywhere.
strategic recasting. I think this movie could be up there for me, even
Okay.
higher.
Okay.
So-
I would need a rewrite of the screenplay, but sorry, Nick.
No, you're good. So, do we want to give some final thoughts here about Troy?
I'm going to consider Brian's Corner my final thoughts because I was kind of saving that as sort of like my here's why. So those are my final thoughts
Sure.
on the movie.
Sure. I will say for me, this movie was. We talked about kind of the theme of this movie was kind of sort of like immortality and being remembered. I feel like this movie is really memorable. Like I will remember this movie. I always will like and remember this movie, and part of it's just because I've seen it a bunch of times. Right? It's kind of one of those movies that like when it's on, I can't turn it off. I'm not sure I've seen it like 5 times all the way through in a row, but if you add up as much time I've spent watching this movie, it's probably around that many views. So. I don't know.
It's been nice having it on in the background, to be honest. It's not a jarring or abrasive movie.
Yeah, it's a well shot.
Sure.
Or you can just tell I kind of said earlier, you can tell they spent a lot of money on this movie. I mean, it shows they did.
Well, it's a nice sand-colored palette spectrum from beginning to end.
Well, yes. I mean, it
good
does
background.
suffer from that. But I mean, it's like the costumes and all the decorum and all. I mean, it's all very just elaborate.
I think it won.
They had to-
I think it was at least nominated for an Oscar for
yeah, I
costume.
think that's correct. Yeah. So, anyways, really like this movie. Recommend it to you if this is even kind of something that you think you might be into. Not the greatest movie of all time. There's some cringy stuff in it for sure, but I think there's actually some enjoyment to be had with the cringe stuff as well. So, anyways. Yeah, really like this movie. I think maybe that's my highest rating yet, maybe or close.
Is
I'm
it?
not sure.
Ooh, yeah, maybe.
I think I rated Bad Boys
Bad
pretty
Boys
high. I
was
like
high.
Bad
Oh
Boys.
yeah, you were
I
in the
don't-
90s for sure for that Bad
Was
Boy.
it in the 90s?
I think
it
you
might have
were.
been. I don't know. I do love Bad Boys. Bad Boys 1's better than 2 though. So if we ever get to that, but anyways, we've done enough Michael Bay. I think we can all agree on that.
Let's wait till at least our 20th episode to do Transformers.
Yes, we'll wait a little while. All right, Grizz. Yeah, any closing thoughts about Troy?
No, I really enjoyed it. I mean, this is the second time, maybe third time I've watched it. I'm pretty sure I saw it twice in theaters. So 19 years later, 20 years later, I still really enjoyed it. So I think it's a great flick. I highly recommend it for anybody that wants to go back and rewatch something like this in a home theater or with some friends and, get a little action flick in there. But yeah.
All right. Well, this is Critical Mess. I mean, we have a couple more loose ends to tie up here. A final thank you to Dalmore, or I'm sorry, pardon me, the Dalmore,
It's like the McAllen, the Dalmore.
the Ohio State University.
And we
Portwood
apologize,
Reserve.
Modelo. We will bring you back for the
Did
next
we ever
episode.
resolve if it was Modelo or Modelo? I think it is maybe Modelo.
Modelo?
I don't know what
I've
it
always
is.
heard Modelo.
I also don't apologize to Modelo because they don't need any help. They're number one in the country.
They're absolutely
Let's
crushing
give
it right now.
the Dalmore a little bit more love. That's who needs the love.
Good
yeah,
call.
thanks,
Good call.
Dalmore.
I mean, you can apologize if you want to. Who am I to tell you who not to apologize to?
So we're gonna do another podcast,
We are.
and
Forever.
Another
We're gonna-
podcast episode, or we're starting a whole new podcast?
no,
We
we're
should
gonna
start
do
a new
another
podcast.
episode.
Can we call it Brian's Corner?
Yes. No, we're doing another episode, and we're gonna do a movie that fits our criteria.
Very
We-
much so.
We're talking before the show, and
Are we
we're
gonna let him do this to
Absolutely.
us, Nick?
I am
Talking
going
about-
to take the wheel,
Wait
and
a
I'm
minute.
going to select the movie for next week.
This is
'Cause
majority.
I
Nick-
will agree to this if this costs me money to rent on Amazon. I need the $4.
it will not cost you money, and I did this on
I don't
purpose.
have Netflix.
I will give you my Netflix password.
Hey, don't say
I
that.
don't think
on-
it works like
on-
that.
I don't care, Netflix.
It
Writers
doesn't-
and actors
it
are on
doesn't work
strike.
like
They
that.
don't know what's going
I've
on.
already tried to use another person's Netflix before. It
I'll
doesn't
help
work
you.
anymore, man.
I will help you pay for this if you
It-
absolutely hate the film. I think you will like it, and I know for a fact Brian will hate this.
What's this motherfucking movie?
So, this came out. This might be the newest film by far.
Oh, I know what it is.
You already know?
2022 action thriller. It's 2 hours and 9 minutes. Not bad. Rated PG-13. It has a 46 critic, 90% audience.
I hate PG-13 movies.
This one's pretty solid, pretty aggressive PG-13. So I'll give
So
it
you've
that.
seen this?
Oh yes, I have seen this.
Oh yeah.
I have seen this. Yeah.
Oh,
I enjoyed it. So I'm in that top area. So starring Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Billy Bob
Oh.
Thornton. Okay. It is on Netflix.
The
It is
Gray
called
Man?
The Gray Man.
The Gray Man.
Recent film.
I've
Action
seen it.
thriller. You have seen it.
I've seen it.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was
Great.
expecting you guys not to see this because I didn't think Brian would actually enjoy it or have any interest in
I
it.
didn't, nor do I.
Ooh, good. I like this because I am probably in that 80, close to 90 range for this.
Hang on,
one.
let me check my rating. Let me check and see what I won't spoil.
I'm gonna give it a rewatch. I've only watched it once. I watched it last year when it freshly. I always watch the new Netflix films and action flicks.
Yeah, let's do this.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. So yeah,
Ah.
well, we shall
unless
see.
unless you disagree, Nick, I think that
That's fine.
We'll get
No,
you. We'll
I'm-
get you some way to get
No,
Netflix.
yeah, we'll figure that out.
Directed and written by the Russo brothers. You know, right after their Marvel run with a Marvel star.
And I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna turn down an opportunity to watch Ana de Armas in a movie.
I knew you wouldn't.
I mean,
Exactly. I know.
good Lord.
I knew you wouldn't. You big perv.
Oh, come on.
No,
Yeah.
I think this is a fun movie. I like this a lot. I think the Netflix genre of action films that they just release 2-3 times a year are enjoyable. Extraction 1 and 2. I
was
haven't seen
gl-
the second one yet, but Extraction 1 was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you didn't say Red Notice because
No, that was more of a comedy action. I don't know what you would call that, but The Gray Man feels a little bit higher tier than that for sure. But yeah, I'm
All
excited.
right, that's what we're doing.
Let's do it.
Critical Mess episode. Is that episode 13?
this will be 13.
Yep.
46 and 90. This is going to be a good
Friday the
discrepancy
13th better
here.
not fit our criteria because that would be
Look that up real
We should have
fast,
done 12
Brian.
Monkeys for this one,
Damn
or the
it.
12th Warrior. Wait,
yeah. We're running out of number opportunities
So,
fast. There's
yeah.
no
Just
14th
to
anything.
let-
I know there's a number 23 with Jim Carrey.
Just to
Yeah,
catch
there's no
new
way that-
listeners, we have reviewed Hook, Bad Boys 2, The Greatest Showman, Rocky 4, Last Jedi, which was a big one, Tommy Boy, Twilight, Armageddon, Vanilla Sky, and recently Blair Witch is now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
And we got one in the hopper.
And we have one in the tank, and this one's recording now. So check them all out.
Yeah, baby.
Anywhere podcasts are available.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Critical Mass. It's always fun to do these, and we very much appreciate you deeply if you made it this far into the episode. Thank you so much. We love you. And we will be back again next time for another episode of Critical Mass. Thanks, everybody.
Later.
See ya.